Okay, thank you very much. So, welcome to how to craft a powerful identity for research and innovation. And hello and welcome to you all. The session, we're going to try and keep it to about 45 minutes because we want to give plenty of opportunity for people to ask questions. So from that point of view, we kind of like to make it iterative, but don't butt in when we're mid-flow, otherwise it will just go on forever because we'll forget where we are. So one little hint, with apologies to System of a Down, feel free to steal this presentation. It is the culmination of well over 10,000 hours of work in the next 45 minutes. So hopefully there's some useful bits in there for you to go, oh, I love that. Please do.
Not hours.
Yeah, all of it is ours, in fact. So we posit this thing about how to craft a powerful identity for research and innovation. And your first question in response to that is probably why? Why is it even important to do that? And here are 3 reasons why that is the case. First of all, there is no award that I know of for making research impenetrable. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You increase internal and external engagement by creating an identity that enables communication. Attention is in short supply. Okay, we know that in the world, full stop, as people that have come out of the advertising industry into this brand space. We just know it. But you will increase awareness for your research and innovation, or for your hub or your accelerator, by creating an identity. And finally, funding is even shorter supply. That's for sure, right, at the minute. But you can improve your chances of getting it if your communications are better, if awareness is higher, etc. So those are the 3 principal reasons why this is really important. To sum that up in a word, or a sentence, sorry, research like an academic, write like a journalist is a phrase I stole from somebody and I can't remember who. It was a researcher who wrote something and then other researchers criticised them for making it very, very simple, said they dumbed it down. Actually, what they'd done is made it accessible to a much, much bigger audience. It is all about communication. And that, I think, is, or we think, is one of the single biggest challenges with research. It's not about having the brains to do it and having the problems to solve. It's about how you communicate that. Bring in more partners, engage more people, bring in more funding. And identity is at the heart of that.
Thank you, Ian. So, a big part of the problem with identity is once you've created it, you then end up with something that looks very similar to all the identities that someone else has created for their thing. And to elaborate that point, we're going to play a very quick game. Now, normally we run this with one organisation or institution, so it's a lot easier, we'd expect them. But I know there's certainly a lot of people from Bristol Uni here. There's definitely someone from Bath here, hopefully someone from UE here. So we're going to play a little game of spot your uni in how they talk about research. And just to add it into the mix, we also got ChatGPT to write one for us as well. So top marks if you can spot your institution, another institution, and the ChatGPT one. Okay? So I'll read these quickly. So this is one of those institutions where they're talking about research and innovation. Our world-leading research is improving lives and changing the world. Our enterprise and innovation deliver scientific and economic impact, benefiting communities locally, nationally, and internationally. We engage with the public, policymakers, charities, and businesses to inform new research directions. Another one. We're breaking research boundaries and changing the world. We're ambitious. We think big and want to make a positive difference to our planet. We transform futures through our actions and practice with a focus on solving real-world challenges. Our research is driven by our passion to make a positive impact on the world. We're not afraid to challenge the status quo and explore new frontiers of knowledge. We collaborate across disciplines and sectors to address some of the most complex and urgent issues facing humanity. Our research enhances our teaching and inspires our students to become the leaders of tomorrow. God, you will get an impression of what it's like to be my kids at 7:30. Charlie went into the glass elevator. Our research tackles some of the world's most pressing issues in areas as diverse as infection and immunity, human rights, climate change, and cryptography and information security. We aim to bring together the best minds in individual fields and encourage researchers from different disciplines and institutions to work together to find lasting solutions to society's pressing problems. And finally, you'll all be glad to know, creativity and innovation are essential to solve the wicked problems of the current age, globally and locally, from climate change to levelling up. We are the creative heart of the West and will ensure that creativity and innovation are embedded across our region at all levels and scales to ensure that we're central to finding these solutions. Right. So we're going to go through them in order. Okay. So I guess the thing is, if anybody has got an idea as to which one it is, put your hands up. There's no shame. And obviously, if you spot yours or ChatGPT, that's fantastic. Go on then. You think Bristol's the first? Yeah, lots of nodding for Bristol.
UE's number 2.
UE's number 2. Okay, let's start with one and work along. So Bristol's the first one for sure. Skynet for 1. So number 1 was the University of Bath. Ching, this exercise has paid off already. Oh, wonderful. You're from the university. Did you get it? Yeah, kinda. Yeah, okay, all right, good. So that's the first one. Second, someone said UE for the second one. Any advice? Are you from UE?
No.
Right.
I just know their brand.
Okay. Wow, that's a fanboy, UE fanboy. Who is from UE? You need to talk to that guy. No one? Right. Right. UE. Very good. Very good. Right, third one. So what have we got left? We've got Bristol, Bath Spa, and Skynet. So third one. Bristol, shaking head over there. We've got some doubt. ChatGPT. Okay, right. Come on. It's getting a lot easier now, admittedly. Yeah, just keep statistically, you're going to get Bristol. Not Bristol. Not Bristol. No, okay, brilliant. But that's great because Bristol, it is. Who would say wicked? Sorry, wouldn't say wicked. So the last one, actually, to my mind, the most distinct of the lot of them is, of course, Bath Spa University. And I don't think we've got anyone from Bath Spa to revel in that glorious moment here. So, but hopefully, what we've shown here is that there is a lot of overlap between this. Now, I know that some of you may be from different organizations to higher ed and things like that, but the same thing happens elsewhere. Those words transform, big societal challenges, etc., etc. Everyone is constantly trying to shove them in, and you end up with this same hodgepodge of identity. And hopefully the process we're about to talk through is a way of overcoming that. So we're Firehouse. We specialize, I'm going to get the words wrong now, but creating, what's our proposition? We work igniting the brands of higher education, research, and enterprise institutions to help them do this and create impact identities. And we do it in a 3-step process, which is broadly going to follow the next 40 minutes or 35 minutes. So we think first through the brand position and create clarity and focus in the kind of underpinnings of what we're trying to say. We then give it emotional power with a brand idea, and we then energize the team and the audiences with the brand behavior afterwards. And I'll talk through the first one of those 3, and then Ian will cover the brand idea and Beth will cover brand behavior. And then hopefully afterwards you'll have a useful framework to kind of apply this and do this yourself if you want to. So first, bringing clarity and focus with brand positioning. So when people talk about positioning, you quite often see something like this, some 4-part matrix with something up here, so like authentic and cool and like conservative and hip or whatever going across left to right. And the art of the positioning thing is to get your brand or your identity in the space where nothing else is, and then you can go, that's great, we're unique, we're distinct, and we're differentiated. The challenge with that is it quite often ends up with you having to manipulate the axes so much in order for you to stand out and be totally differentiated from your competitors that you end up with something that is totally meaningless in the first place. You end up with where you have either come up with some very, very strange words to label at the end of these things that have very little to do with why someone would want to interact with your organization or institution, or you discount, well, we're the innovative ones and they're just a bit more traditional, so I'll just move them over to that half and then we've got some nice weight space. It doesn't really work in practice. On top of that, you have a much bigger challenge, which is that most people don't think of brands or things really in a kind of one-dimensional way. There isn't the innovative university or the cutting edge, whatever, future space or something. People don't think like that. People think in a multifaceted way. And when you're thinking about your identity and how to get them to come to you and talk to you, which is functionally what we're trying to do here, this guy's got some wise words. Attitudes, as in they're innovative, they're this, are about evaluating the brand. So once someone's come to you, they may think you are friendly or authentic or whatever. But actually, to get thought of in the first place, salience is the name of the game. As in, does it come to mind easily? That is the critical thing of creating an identity. Does it come to mind? And does it come to mind on one thing or on multiple things? So let me kind of illustrate this really simply with Coca-Cola. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. So when I think of Coke, starting with Coke, I think sugary drink, like it's bright red, maybe it's not fun, but fun, youthful, corporate, that kind of stuff. There's all these ideas that come from it. But none of those things are ever going to lead me to kind of going and buying a Coke, and then nothing is happening there. What works really, really well for Coke, and they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money putting this into people's minds, is the entry points into that, the needs. So when I'm thirsty on a hot day, I think of Coke. When I want a drink out with no alcohol, I might have a Coke. A portable drink with lunch, energy boost. Even when that of a can, you just start thinking about Coke instinctively. And that is because they have done a fantastic job of driving Coke into your brain next to those entry points. And they're valuable entry points for them, right? And obviously bad press, etc., might be some entry points that they don't want you thinking about them. But they're putting a hell of a lot of effort and resources into doing that. And that is the secret to a great identity and a great brand. Now, obviously, they've been doing it for a very, very long time. So they're capable of having multiple things, and they're having to spend time and money reinforcing those points over time. But universities, innovation organizations, whatever, need to have a full suite of these things. That is the end goal. We don't want to be just a one-dimensional identity. However, you haven't got as much money as Coke. If you have, please come and speak to us afterwards. But you need to start chipping away at these points. Build up one, then move on to another, reinforcing that second one, move on to another, move on to another, move on to another. It's about identifying and building as many of these as possible. So the question you need to ask yourself in terms of identity is, what needs do you want to be next to in the minds of your audiences? That is the critical underpinning of a great identity. And note, there are multiple needs and there are multiple audiences, and that is absolutely fine. There's a lot of kind of marketing logic that says you have to drive it down to one thing and one thing only for one group of people. You don't need to. If you can get it to align across multiple audiences, fantastic. But huge organizations like higher ed and research organizations have very, very different audiences. And it is okay to present different identities to different audiences. So if you've answered that question and you thought, right, these are the things that we want to be next to, how do you go from that step into turning that into the beginnings of a brand position and a brand idea and brand identity? Well, you have to run them through 3 tests. So you've got your list of entry points, you have to run them through 3. Credibility, can you credibly say you should be next to that in their heads? Because if you can't actually substantiate it, it's not worth the time in the first place. Secondly, competitiveness. So how competitive is that particular entry point? If you want to be known for whatever, precise measurement innovation or something like that, how many other people want to be known about that, and how good a job are they doing? How much of a chance do you stand duking it out over that? And finally, commonality. How frequently does that thing occur? You might be great at being known for a particular thing, but if only one person thinks of that once a year, you've got a very, very small audience. So you need to find something that multiple people are thinking about a lot of the time. So on the assumption that you basically would never talk about anything that you're not credible at, and you can rank yourself on these two, you should be able to end up with something that looks a little bit like this. So commonality, high commonality over here. This happens a lot, which is a good thing. Competitiveness, we are competitive on this, on the vertical axis. And in short, as with all matrices in a marketing meeting, the top right is the best place to be. So the more stuff you can get up in there that is true about you, the better. But it's still worth considering the rest of the slide because it makes a difference to your how you think about your identity and your strategy for it. So in the bottom left, you might have some entry points in there that, you know, at the start you thought were important for you, but you've realized they're not that common and it's very, very competitive. Don't really want to think about those. Low priority entry points, scrap them, move on. In the bottom right are what we think of as hygiene entry points. These are really, really important associations because they happen a lot and because they're on the list, they're important to you. You need to reinforce those entry points, but that way is just maintaining the status quo. That is not the way to growth. In the top left, you have what we think of as danger entry points. So these are things that you are very competitive on, but aren't actually that common. They can be used to great effect in the right hands, but sometimes the problem is they act as a bit of a blocker, as an eclipse on some of the stuff you want to talk about in the right, because everyone's mind goes to there because you are so distinct and differentiated on that point. That's where the mind goes. It just doesn't help you that you're distinct and differentiated on that. And then finally, top right, priority entry points, the associations that you need to work very hard to get into people's minds. So in short, a lot of your communications and actions that Beth and Ian are going to come on to talk about are really interested in this side of the graph. You need to cover these things on web pages or whatever, but this is the stuff that you need to be shouting about and championing in order to create this impact identity. And that is the stuff that needs to be taken into the next phase, the brand idea phase, to help for them, the creative process, to bring that stuff to life. If you can identify that, that's the clarity. So I'll very, very quickly talk about Loughborough Business School that we went through this process with. The new dean, well, she's been there for 18 months now. We worked with prior on a big research group hub thing. She moved in, very ambitious, really wanted to update the school. At the time, it was Loughborough School of Business and Economics, or something a bit of a mouthful. She wanted a new identity, and she wanted to be famous and for people to hear about it. Asked us in. The most important bit, in my eyes, as a strategy guy, is that we did not rely on our intuition. When we filled in that matrix, we did a hell of a lot of background work to understand where those post-it notes should be, essentially. It seems really flippant, the movement of a thing, but it was really, really important to understand. We spoke to people, did a load of quant and qual, load of desk, competitor review, which is critically important so you don't get blindsided. But we made sure that we could objectively position everything in there. And when we got there, there was a couple of key things. Obviously, I can't share all Loughborough's secrets with you guys, but it's important things. So pretty infrequently and very badly and competitive, they've got a safe campus, right? I think they've got the biggest campus in the UK or maybe Europe. It's really safe, which is great, but most students and most business partners couldn't care about that stuff, so it's in the bottom left, amongst other things. Something that academic partners particularly like is collegiate behaviour. Apparently, the life of academic is a horrible, lonely place to be, and they desperately want collegiate colleagues to spend their time with. So it's a really, really common thing. Loughborough could say they could do it, but so could a lot of other people. Can anyone guess for Loughborough University what would be a danger entry point overall? What is something that they're very well known for, but might not be as frequent as you think? Sports. Yes, exactly. So sports. So for some of their courses, that's obviously over here. That's brilliant. But for a lot of their courses and a lot of their relationships with business, funding bodies, etc., sport really wasn't that important and could distract people. What actually was important were these two things. One, the business school already worked with purpose-led businesses quite extensively. Second, they had a very good track record of supercharging careers, and they had the numbers and stats to prove it. But together, individually, those two things were kind of in the middle, right? They weren't, other business schools did that kind of stuff. But we realized when looking at the competitor set, you combine those two things together and no other business school was talking about that. Most other business schools talked about one or the other, never the two together. So we worked with them and went through to the brand idea phase and everything and created Progress with Purpose. Loughborough Business School is at the heart of a movement inspiring improved performance of purpose-led people, yourself, and organizations. Have I got enough time to do the video, or we created this off the back of it?
Bring your purpose.
Bring your passion.
Bring your desire.
And determination.
Bring your hopes.
Bring your fears.
Bring your anger.
And optimism.
Bring your open mind.
Your vision. Your curiosity.
And kindness.
Bring your willingness to work together.
To be challenged.
Provoked.
And inspired.
Bring your authentic self.
Bring it all.
And join us.
To shape a fairer, more sustainable future.
Supercharging your career.
And the performance of purposeful organizations.
What are you waiting for?
Great. So the critical bit of that was that balance of your personal success and making a difference. And if you look at other business schools, I'd like to think you'll find very few other business schools doing that. A lot of work was done with the creative, which Ian's about to talk about, but it all came from that underlying positioning and that chart that said these two things together in the top right make us different and make us distinct from others. And it came from there. Over to you.
Cool. So, now we're going to give it emotional power with the brand idea, which hopefully you saw in that Loughborough piece. There was the foundations of the strategy, and those foundations are incredibly deep, which makes the thing that you're going to build on it strong, but you've still got to build on it. I think there is a tendency within research and innovation hubs in particular that we don't tend to see in other places. And that is because people are really smart there. They go for a logical approach. Well, if this equals this, then the answer is this. So that's the answer. And basically, they never move beyond potentially the foundations. They don't build a real identity, but the foundations are incredibly important. What we have to remember is you're speaking to the head, the logic, and the heart. That's why it has to have an emotional angle to it. And that's why all of that script for the Loughborough film is actually quite strongly emotive. That's why I fought for the word anger to stay in that script when everybody wanted the word anger out. It's probably why whoever did the copy for Bar Spa, I bet they had to fight for that word wicked. All right? And I'll tell you why this is you're speaking to the heart and the head. Look at those 5 statements that were put up earlier that Nick did. And when he read out, I wasn't watching, I just listened. When he read out that last one about wicked, certain people in the audience who weren't sat that far from me went, "Ooh." That's the emotion. That's what you want. It's because we're humans. We may be researchers and unbelievably clever, and we may work in innovation, and we may be talking about millions of pounds worth of funding and all this sort of stuff and change it, but we're humans and we need to operate on that level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a case study to illustrate some of the elements that are required to create the brand idea that is built on those foundations. And I'm going to do it through a piece of work that certain people in this audience were party to. So if I lie at any point, they have a right to stand up and go, "That's a load of crap. Tell the truth." All right? But I'm going to do just 3 elements of it. The name, unbelievably important. The visual identity, clearly important, part of being distinct. and the story, where that wicked bit comes in, or anger. So let's race through. Here we go. The foundations. I'm just going to read this very quickly because it's super important. The purpose for this quantum project for University of Bristol at the time, to bring quantum technology out of the lab and into the world to help tackle the challenges of the future. Okay? Get it? Mission: to define and grow the quantum commercial cluster in Bristol to support this transition. Okay? You can see the story building, and ultimately a vision of the UK as a global leader in commercial quantum ventures. Critical bit is this is about commercializing quantum, not just the research bit. It's how do we bring it out and into the world. So let some of that stuff swirl around in your brain as I take you through the next bit. I am actually phenomenally young. I was just born with a very old face. So it wasn't that long ago that this guy, Chris O'Shea, who looks as though, I don't know, looks as though the picture was taken in 1840 or something, but it's not. But I was merely a lad in short trousers when I asked this legend, where'd you get the ideas from? And he leaned over into my ear and said, the answer's in the product. And I've never forgotten it. If you look in the product, you will find the answer to all of the questions. You're just going to have a different brain on when you do it. It's got to have the emotive bit switched on so that you can see the bits in the product or the service that are going to get people excited. Now, the first thing is, of course, the name. Hugely contentious, but it's really important because a name is, it's an identification, it's a seal or a guarantee. It can be the start of a story in a name, it can be the end of a story, it can be present within that name. But as rational as we like to think we are, I can promise you, when you get the names, it's all out the window. All out the window. People, you get phrases like, don't really like it, why not? Why don't you like it? Because isn't that name the perfect way to capture this? Yeah, I don't like it. I had a friend and he worked for a company, and they were a terrible company, and their name was a bit like that. But it's not this, is it? So just weird stuff happens, all right? Now, we didn't have an enormous problem when we worked on this particular project, but this is a useful matrix for you to use when coming up with a name. Names generally can fall into these characteristics. The founder, it's a descriptive name, it's fabricated, literally made up. It can be a metaphor, an acronym, or it can be suggestive. So it's just real words that suggest something else. So here are some examples. You will know them all. Founder, obviously, Tommy Hilfiger. That's the bloke that started it. Or Heinz, back in 1869. Descriptive, I mean, PlayStation. It just kind of, you don't even think about it now, do you? But somebody sat down and wrote that and said, I think I got the name. PlayStation. But actually, it's brilliant, isn't it? Just Eat. I mean, that's flipping hell. But fabricated names and all that stuff. Guess where most or a lot of research and innovation names tend to fall? Which category do they tend to fall into? Acronyms. And that's a massive, massive danger. It's a massive danger because it looks like the right thing to do, doesn't it? I mean, why wouldn't you? It's quite logical. Take that bit of word and that bit of word, or we take the first letter from a bunch of things, stick it together, we've got a thing. And then you end up with some things that they might sound like a logical thing to do, but as soon as you start to say them, they actually they conjure up weird things in other people's minds. I could give you some examples, but I won't, because some of those people may be present. But they cause problems in both verbal and written communications. They cause massive problems when you're creating URLs as well. But those things aren't considered at the time. So that's just a watch out. The name that we came up with, for lots of reasons, was Quantum Frontier. And we actually started by saying we're not going to put the word quantum in it at all. For sensible reasons, it is. But look at the word frontier. Think about what that does immediately. Think about what those foundations were, about that transition from one state to another, about this being a place in Bristol, but it's something that's going to move. So that's where the name came from. The next piece was the visual identity. And so we created a logo from the name. The logo hints at the nature of quantum mechanics with particles, etc. And you need to bear in mind when you are creating logos that they've got to work in colour and black and white. They've got to work at different sizes. You may want a strapline to be incorporated. You may not. Straplines, by the way, whole nother issue, but actually a lot of fun and super important. Okay, so you can set the dream up with the name. I would call that name a descriptive one. We are describing what this place is going to be like. Frontier, and then we pin it with that, where business breaks boundaries. That's what's going to happen here. Okay, the other thing with a logo, if you can, create an animated version of it. Animated logos are stick in the brain, so super important. Now, it may come as a surprise to you, but I am not a quantum physicist. But what I am, apart from slightly tipsy in that picture, is I am a creative director, and I have spent my entire career spotting ideas and stories and then working out how to make them bigger and more dramatic. But I had to go back into the product and dig. Okay? Now, I need to go and talk to people. I need to chuck some ideas around and send an email to somebody going, I'm thinking this. Is it mad? And yes, it's mad. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, right, okay. What about this? You might be onto something. Okay? So you have to do a lot of digging, a lot of reading. I didn't read them all, but I dug into them. I understood very little. But the beauty of that was I was told by some of the people up there, like Noah Linden and everything, like, yeah, well, you probably won't understand it because not entirely sure we do either. You know, this is an emerging science. But right in that product, right in that this subject was the answer to the visual identity, and it's called superpositioning. It's where an atom can be in several places at the same time within quantum mechanics. So interpret that into a visual way. Okay, so we could look at one thing from different positions at the same time. Okay, so that's where we went. That's where we went for the visual identity. Colour, okay, we didn't have to, we quite often do have to work with the colour palettes of a given university at the time, and that's fine, we're perfectly used to doing that. In this case, we didn't have to, because Quantum Frontier was actually going to be bigger than the university. It's going to involve a huge number of organisations and cover the whole region. But where do we go for colour? I mean, I could just pick some colours that I like and create a nice colour palette, but isn't it more fun if you can dig in and find the answer in the product? Just the weird thing is that within quantum mechanics, probably everything is white or invisible. But when they do look into where they expect particles to exist at any given time, a chart has been created to do that. And that gave us the kind of, whoa, interesting. That's where our colour can come from. So that effectively became that we extrapolated our identity, our colour identity of it, out of that. And then finally, the story. And there are 3 bits about a story that I would really urge everybody to think about, speaking to the heart and the head. And that is capture the imagination, create some sense of anticipation about your research and innovation, or about the whole hub that you are creating, or the accelerator or whatever. Create some sense of excitement around it. Demand attention, okay? You're working with lots of stakeholders invariably, different fund holders and all that kind of stuff. The temptation is always to compromise. They're not sure about this, they're not keen on that, they don't really want that, and so you gradually become safer and safer and safer, and you end up where we were in the stuff that Nick was showing you, which is none of it's wrong, and none of it stands out. Be a thing, not a no thing, would be my thing. And the other thing is punch it out. You need to cut through. It's not a time to be apologetic once you have come up with the piece that you're working on. Get it out, show people, demand attention. If you have some budget, put some money behind promoting it. Because it's really important. It starts to get into people's heads so that you are getting them into the point where they are associating you with some of these entry points. It may be, 6 months away before some massive funder or corporate partner goes, hey, these guys in flipping Bristol or Bath, or they're doing this thing, aren't they? Could be it could be 12 months away, but it could be a £30 million investment they're going to make. We actually went for quite a long articulation for Quantum Frontier to actually tell the story, but again, you'll see from the foundations how that is then being creatively taken. So based in Bristol, Quantum Frontier is the gateway to a new world of business built on quantum science. It's where challengers and visionaries converge to create exciting next generation enterprises. We're demanding your attention, and we're painting in your imagination, and we're trying to elicit some sense of emotion from something which is actually theoretical physics. Anyway, there's a whole load of stuff behind that. This is the little film.
Join us at the frontier, where business breaks boundaries, where world-class research and commerce connect, where challengers and visionaries converge, and where we create the next generation quantum enterprises, where we confront global challenges and discover what is possible at the extremes of commercial innovation, where cutting-edge technology comes out of the lab and into the world, supporting prosperity, security, and healthy, sustainable lives. Where the curious have pushed the limits for a century, and where we continue to collaborate, embracing the unknown, to reimagine the future.
That's not going to go on TV anytime soon. It's not going to win any awards anytime soon. What it has done is, in 60 seconds, it's fixed the idea of what the frontier is about, both in the mind and in the heart, to be able to share with investors, other partners, other academics, other institutions. And finally, where next? Where next indeed, Tamsin? Let's take on the world. But the critical thing is, it doesn't matter where we go next. We've got incredibly strong foundations. We've got an identity that's super clear and distinct amongst the competition. I could have stuck up the competition and stuck ours in there. The global competition, not regional. I mean, we looked at everybody and we got a name, a visual identity and everything that is completely distinct from anybody else in this space at the moment. So we can go anywhere.
Sorry, just recording what we're saying, people. And there we are. You don't want to miss out on being able to listen to me back at any points. Right, so the third part of our framework is called brand behaviour. And it's third, but really it's sort of a halo, I think, that kind of runs throughout everything that you've been talking about. Because one of the most, whatever role you have in the room, one of the most important things you can do if you're involved in a project like this, whether it's from a design perspective or project management perspective or what have you, is to recognise the context in which you are undertaking this work. Because it's designed, of course, to be responded to and engaged with by other human beings, both inside and outside your organisation. And often, when you are an academic institution, internal is as important, almost more so a lot of the time, than external. And one of the most important things you can do is recognise that when you build these foundations, when you come up with an identity and you introduce it into the world, it's going to be received in some way. And quite often that's not always in the way that you anticipate. What you're looking at here is something called the Kubler-Ross change curve, and it's how all of us in all facets of our life deal with change, sort of individually, personally, as family, whatever life throws at us at work or otherwise. You will always, whether you recognise it or not, go through this cycle at different rates of acceleration. And what happens quite a lot is you'll launch an identity in the world and go, this is brilliant, isn't it? And then people who haven't been on the journey with you are wrestling with the change and what that means for them and what they're going to need to stop and say goodbye to in the way that you behaved and did things before, and what they're needing to take on and what it means for them individually and personally. And they may initially feel a bit of denial about that. If they're unfamiliar with it, they may become frustrated, maybe even a bit depressed. And what happens quite a lot is the mood or even the productivity level of the people that this has been designed to sort of energize feels a little bit flat. The important thing to say about that is that is natural and it's inevitable and it is unavoidable. But one of the things to do is to call out and recognize that that's the case. And to move people through that curve, support them and facilitate how they move through to recognise, actually, this is quite exciting. This is a period where we can experiment with this new identity and what it means before it becomes more established and more familiar and to a point where it just becomes kind of natural and an automatic way of doing things. So we need to say goodbye to something and we need to facilitate them through to embracing that. And your role in that, whatever part of the project team you are, is actually quite critical. And your job in facilitating that movement through that curve is to do two things. To make sure you speak to the head. So do the people, particularly within the entity that you're doing this for, have an absolute clarity of understanding about why you're doing it, what you're doing and why. Why do we exist? Why are we better than our competitors? What is our story? How do we say it consistently? So some of those foundations that Nick was talking about there. And then critically, do they feel that? Do they share that passion? Have you ignited something in them that they feel excited about being involved in? Are they clear about what it means for their role specifically on a day-to-day basis? Can they easily articulate what that's about and the values and behaviours that are expected of them as a result? And do they feel empowered by what they're seeing to kind of play a part in it? And help you make a difference. There are 3 ways I think that you can help people do that. So these are just some practical ways that we do that within Firehouse as part of the kind of project team. And the first thing is to build a rocket ship. I think not just about quantum. So this comes from a book by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras called Built to Last. I think it's The Secrets of Visionary Companies or something. And the notion that was behind this was the idea that if you were to take your research entity or your spin out or your accelerator, whatever organisation you represent, and you were going to recreate the very best of that organisation on Mars, who are the 5 to 7 people who would be in that rocket ship team? Who are the 5 to 7 people who have kind of a gut level understanding of what you're about, who exhibit sort of positivity and can-do attitude about where you want it to be the very best of itself. And this team is really important to engage from the off, almost as a kind of mini focus group, if you like, throughout the course of a project. So understanding that you cannot necessarily engage all 50, 100, 150 people in an organisation on this journey, because that would be unwieldy and it would be development by committee. What you can do is represent a small cohort of people as you go through, who represent those internal stakeholders and kind of provide the necessary checks and balances as you go through. And also, essentially, create your first wave of advocates and champions who have felt part, who feel a stake in what you're creating, feel a part of it, and will help you in terms of moving everybody through that curve. So think about building a rocket ship team. You're here, you're the ground control, you're the project team, you're the professional services skills who are actually doing the delivering. Yeah, and the flight director is mediating between, you know, that and then the internal wider stakeholders in the university organisation or what have you. But your rocket ship team are your key to finding the right answers as you go through. And the way Ian described it was some of the rocket ship team that you spoke to about the product to get some of the inspiration. So they play a really active role in something. So whether you call it a rocket ship or not, think about how you involve a group of people like this as you go through this journey. Because it makes what happens afterwards an awful lot easier to sell in and persuade people. The other thing is to think about what shared values hold all of you together as an organisation. Now, it can be really tempting if you're a university to go, but we've got our university values, so those are set in stone, but good luck repeating any of them back to anyone, because no one can usually remember, unless it's Bristol and you're bald and Bristolian, but no one remembers the other ones, right? So, which is almost to the point. I think there is a real value in uncovering the values that the actual individuals within your research hub actually hold as individuals and what ties them together. So it's not about imposing a set of values from the top down. It's about uncovering what values those individuals as human beings hold, because that's the basis of knitting people together, along with a purpose, to feel that they are all driving in the same direction. They'll be much more specific to what you're about and what your purpose, mission and vision is. And I promise in some way, shape or form, they will ultimately ladder up to whether there's wider organisational values or not, because those tend to be very generic and broad. But it's a way of actually thinking about what holds this team, creating a sense of shared identity and team together. So think about, it's worth taking a moment to try and capture your shared values as an entity as part of this. And the third thing is, when you get to that point, you know, that Ian got to there with Quantum, or where we got to with Progress of Purpose with Loughborough, the point of creating this identity is not purely about marketing. It's not simply a nice looking bit of wrapper that goes, you know, this isn't something that sits on a supermarket shelf or what have you, right? Brands become embedded, become real things when they are operationalized in the way that people work and the way that people think and the way that people behave. So actually using that as a springboard to thinking about how you, what we call operationalize the brand. So what does it mean for your people and culture? How would it impact how you think about rewarding people, recognizing people, promoting people? How you might think about their roles and responsibilities? Does it help you to think about what structures or ways of working you have in place? Within research itself, does it think about how you recruit potential researchers? Does it think about how you write particular grant applications or how you go out and engage partners? Does it ultimately impact the type of research that you're doing? Does it help to give a focus to that? And if you're part of a higher education institution, how does it ladder up and involve other wider aspects of the university body? Are there learning opportunities for students? Are there opportunities for work-based placements? How does it impact how you engage with alumni? All of these are the different touch points through which your brand lives and comes to life and sort of becomes instinctively known and felt within your organisation. So that's operationalise the brand. We are 2 minutes before time. So we did this with the Faculty of Engineering at Bath, or are in the process of doing it right now. And they have consolidated a number of disparate disciplines across engineering. And they have amalgamated a lot of very small research centres into one kind of giant one. I think this is quite a trend in higher education in general, isn't it? To kind of create these almost sort of super research centres. But in doing so, which was kind of almost a practical exercise, right? We need to go from 30 to 5, and this one that we've created is very broad. No one who sort of said, yes, I'll be part of that recentre really had clarity around what it was about and why they belonged to it. It had been done for practical reasons. So we used a lot of those techniques that I've just talked about, really. We established a rocket ship. We did a lot of work one-to-one with the rocket ship on the purpose and on their values. We did a lot of one-to-one in-depth interviews, and then we ran a lot of workshops to facilitate what that meant to people on an individual basis. And by doing that, by the end of it, which is sort of the point we're at now, so it's kind of like a live project, you not only have a clearer purpose, mission and vision and identity, but what you have is everyone within it feels a lot clearer and more purposeful and more engaged and like they belong to something that they have had a stake in creating. It's already starting to inform how they write bids and applications for things. And actually there was stuff that emerged from that actually suggested what the management leadership team of that research hub needed to do to support everyone within it to be more collaborative, where they felt their skills needed to be uplifted, where they needed to introduce processes and ways of working rather than just assume that, just being in this thing together meant it would happen. So it's had some very practical outcomes. I sort of don't have the visual pictures for you because we're not there yet, but actually the important thing here is to say there were really tangible and therefore so what at the end of that process for ways of working, for collaborating together, for what they were actually going to do, which is a vital part of bringing this brand to life. So that's what that's all we were going to talk about today. There are three. Also, 3 is a good number, right? There's 3. We've thrown a lot at you, but we've each got one thing from each of our sections to say, if you remember just one thing from today, what is it? And it's these. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So the first thing is, I think it's important to remember it's about them. It's not about you. Those post-it notes on that bit I was talking about were not things about your brand or your identity. They are things that other people need, that you can be the answer. That is the building block. That is the fundamental starting point of any creation of identity.
Thanks, Nick.
Do you want to?
It's super easy to create something that means nothing. Not really. So be a thing, not a no thing.
And mine is very practical, but go and build a rocket ship. Whatever you want to call it, how you want to do it, think about that as part of how you go on this journey to creating an impactful brand identity. There we are. And stay in touch if you'd like to know more. Can I just say, in terms of just a pro finish, so it's absolutely on the dot of 4. I know